I still remember the sting of her words. They sliced through the air like a blade. We were at my cousin's graduation party, a night meant for laughter and family pride. Balloons in the school colors hung from the ceiling, trays of catered food lined the tables, and the sound of champagne corks popping filled the hall. I was standing near the center holding a crystal flute when Morgan, my fiancée, tapped her glass for attention. She wore that professional smile of hers, the one that always meant she was about to announce something calculated. "I've decided to keep Fitzgerald as my last name," she said, her voice steady. "Not Morrison. It carries more weight in academia." The room quieted. Someone coughed. A relative snickered. And then, as if on cue, one of her colleagues at the party muttered just loud enough for me to hear. "Guess your $2 million in savings can't even buy her respect." I tightened my grip on the wedding invitation list in my hand. The heavy cardstock bent beneath my fingers. In that instant, I crossed out my own name from the guest list and scribbled attendance still to be determined. You'd think someone would come to my defense, but instead glasses clinked and laughter carried on like nothing had happened. I felt both visible and invisible at once, the kind of humiliation that makes you smile just to keep from breaking. It wasn't just the insult. It was the reminder that money, reputation, and even love can all be measured and compared sometimes, right there in front of people who claim to care about you. But what they didn't know was this: what happened that night wasn't the end of the story. It was the start of a storm that would peel back every polite layer of our lives. So before I go further, let me ask, where are you watching from? And make sure you subscribe, because what comes next is about betrayal, power, and revenge wrapped in family drama that no one saw coming. After that graduation party, the air between us turned heavier than stone. Morgan pretended nothing had happened, as if my quiet act of rebellion, scribbling attendance still to be determined across the guest list, was a childish prank. But word traveled fast. By the time we returned home, her bridesmaids had already organized what they called a friendly intervention. I came back from work one evening to find 4 women waiting in my living room, seated neatly on the couch like a panel ready to pass judgment. Phoebe, always the leader of the pack, crossed her arms and said, "Alex, you need to stop this nonsense. You're embarrassing Morgan." "She's embarrassing herself," I answered, laying my briefcase on the coffee table. "She plans to marry me while carrying another man's name. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a choice." Jade tried the softer approach. "You don't understand academia. Publishing under one name for years creates recognition. If she changes it, she'll lose credibility. Her career is on the line." I leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. She never married Ashton. She never had the legal right to his name. For years, she's been pretending to be connected to him professionally while standing beside me. That's not credibility, that's cosplay. The room grew tense. Ramona Blunt, as always, spoke next. "So you're going to blow up your wedding over a last name? Really, that's what this is about?" I shook my head. "I'm not blowing up anything. I'm being honest. I'm uncertain, just like Morgan was honest about using her ex's name for nearly 3 years. Honesty cuts both ways." The bridesmaids glanced at each other, whispers darting like shadows across the room. A few minutes later, Morgan arrived home and froze when she saw them. "You ambushed him without me," she snapped. "They were just trying to help," I said. "Funny thing, though. They already knew how unreasonable I supposedly am. Wonder who told them that." Her face flushed. "You are being unreasonable. It's just a name." "Then take mine," I said quietly. She hesitated, eyes darting away. "I can't. My entire career is built on the Fitzgerald reputation." That night, she packed a bag and went to her sister Genevieve's house. I sat in the silence of our apartment, staring at the wedding invitations, stacked neatly on the counter. The embossed letters, the carefully chosen font, the gold trim, it all looked ridiculous now, like decorations for a celebration that no longer had a beating heart. But what they didn't know was that the problem ran deeper than a name. There were connections beneath the surface, academic alliances, family power plays, and promises tied to money that explained why Morgan clung so fiercely to Fitzgerald. And soon enough, I would uncover them. It was a Tuesday night when the first real crack appeared in Morgan's story. I was at my desk going through spreadsheets for a client when my phone buzzed. It was Landon, an old friend who worked at the same university as Morgan, though in a different department. "You ever wonder why she's so attached to that name?" he asked without preamble. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temple. "Every day." "Well," he said, his voice low, "I did some digging. You might want to sit down." According to Landon, Ashton wasn't just an ex-boyfriend. His father, Reginald Fitzgerald, was the dean of Morgan's department. Ashton himself had climbed to an associate professorship. Every conference Morgan had spoken at, every research paper she had co-authored, every door that had opened for her, it all traced back to the Fitzgerald family. I stared at the glowing numbers on my computer screen, my hands gone cold. "You're telling me none of it was hers?" "She's smart," Landon said carefully, "but let's be honest. Without that name attached, half her work would have ended up in the slush pile." After we hung up, I sat in silence, the hum of the desk lamp filling the room. Memories came back in a rush, the way Morgan would brush off questions about her past with Ashton, the awkward pauses when colleagues mentioned him at dinners, the relief in her eyes when I didn't press further. I picked up my phone and typed a message. How many of your papers would have been published without Ashton's name? The read receipt appeared instantly. No reply. Minutes later, my phone rang. Caller ID Ashton. Alex, he said awkwardly, I heard about the name issue. I didn't know she was still using it like that. Really, you had no idea. My voice was sharper than I intended. Well, I mean, I knew she used it professionally, but I figured she'd drop it once you two got married. It's weird for me too. Then why haven't you said anything? There was a long pause. Finally, he muttered. Because my dad likes her work. He thinks she's an asset. I was told not to make waves. I almost laughed. So your father is protecting her career and she's keeping your family's name like it's a passport to every closed door in academia. Ashton exhaled. Look, Alex, I don't want to be in the middle of this. But if you're smart, you'll ask her why she really insists on keeping Fitzgerald. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered the apartment staring at framed pictures of us, the ski trip to Vermont, the summer wedding where she wore lavender, the first photo we took in front of our new apartment. They all looked like postcards from a life that belonged to someone else. By dawn, I had my answer, not because Morgan confessed, but because Landon sent me something far worse. An email chain. It was between Reginald Fitzgerald and a university trustee. In it, Morgan was referred to as a reliable ally and was promised access to an inheritance fund for research if she continued representing the Fitzgerald name in her publications. I printed the emails, the ink still warm under my fingertips. I stared at the notary stamp in the attached document, proof that this wasn't rumor, it was policy. The humiliation I had felt at the graduation party now seemed like a pebble compared to the mountain of betrayal in front of me. This wasn't just about love or names. It was about inheritance, reputation, and the quiet deals struck behind closed doors. And I knew then I wasn't just fighting for respect. I was fighting against a machine that saw me as disposable. But what they didn't know was that I had something they couldn't control: the truth. When Morgan finally came back to the apartment, she carried herself like a lecturer, returning to scold a student. Her heels clicked against the hardwood, her coat draped neatly across her arm, and her face wore that polished calm she saved for faculty meetings. You embarrassed me, she said, before the door even closed. I set down the folder I'd been holding, the one containing Landon's email printouts. Funny. I thought you embarrassed yourself parading around with another man's name while planning to marry me. Her lips tightened. Alex, you're making this emotional. It's practical. My career is built on Fitzgerald. Everyone knows me under that name. I opened the folder just enough for the papers to peek out. And by everyone, you mean every committee Ashton's father controls, every journal his colleagues manage, every conference where doors swing open because they think you're part of their dynasty. Her face drained of color, but she pressed on. That's not fair. I've worked hard under false pretenses. I stood pushing the folder across the table so the embossed university seal was visible. Tell me, Morgan, was it also practical when you let me believe you kept that name for recognition, not for inheritance? She froze, eyes locked on the papers she hadn't dared to touch. Then, with a sharp movement, she shoved them back toward me. You shouldn't have those. Maybe not, I said quietly, but I do, and they're real. The fight that followed stretched into hours, her defending me, dissecting every excuse. By midnight, she had stormed out again, this time, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the picture frames. The next evening, the confrontation escalated. We were at her parents' house for dinner. The table was set with polished silver crystal glasses, roast beef, carved thin and steaming. Laughter filled the room until I cleared my throat. There's something everyone here should hear. Morgan's mother frowned. Alex, perhaps this isn't... I held up my phone. On the screen was a screenshot of the bridesmaids' group chat messages Morgan had let slip while she thought I wasn't paying attention. Words about me: childish, insecure, a man who should be grateful to marry up. Do these sound like friends supporting her? Or like a council mocking me behind my back? The room went still. Morgan reached across the table, whispering, "Stop, please." But I wasn't finished. She tells you this is about academic recognition. Yet privately, she admits her career is chained to Ashton's family. That's not respect, it's dependency. Then, like fate choosing its moment, someone's phone pinged. Ramona gasped. A short video clip had just gone viral online, filmed at a university mixer months ago. In it, Morgan laughed with colleagues and said, "It's practically a paper marriage with Ashton. Academically, I'll always be a Fitzgerald." The sound of forks clattering against plates echoed through the dining room. Her father's face turned crimson. Her mother covered her mouth with a trembling hand. Morgan's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. Her own words broadcast across social media, now playing out in the palms of strangers and family alike. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled and she sank back into her chair. It was a joke, she whispered. Just a joke. But no one was laughing. And what they didn't know was that this was only the beginning. The storm had broken. The damage had only just begun. The clip of Morgan spread faster than wildfire. Within hours, it leapt from the university's gossip boards to Twitter threads, then into faculty group chats, and finally onto the screens of strangers who had no idea who Morgan was, but loved the scent of a scandal. By the next morning, hashtags were trending: number fake marriage, number academic bride, number Fitzgerald favor. Someone had even set the clip to dramatic background music and uploaded it on TikTok, where it racked up 500,000 views overnight. Morgan tried to hold her head high, walking into campus with her chin raised, but colleagues avoided her eyes. Some whispered, others didn't bother whispering at all. She later told me that students had passed around memes of her face superimposed onto wedding cakes with Ashton's name plastered in gold icing. Her family went into damage control, hosting a rehearsal dinner at a private country club to prove everything was under control. The Fitzgeralds were invited, of course. Reginald himself showed up wearing his dean's smile that never quite reached his eyes. The room sparkled with chandeliers, polished wood floors, and waiters balancing silver trays of champagne. Morgan looked like she had painted confidence onto her skin, dress pressed hair, gleaming voice rehearsed. She stood clinking her glass, ready to spin the narrative. But I had come prepared. As the speeches began, I pulled the folder from my briefcase and laid it on the table. The embossed seal shone under the lights. I rose slowly, letting the sound of my chair scraping the floor cut through the chatter. There's something I'd like to share, I said, holding up a stack of printed emails. Since honesty is supposed to be the foundation of a marriage. Morgan's hand shot out, her smile faltering. Alex, don't. But I did. I read aloud the email from Reginald to the trustee. If she continues publishing under Fitzgerald, the inheritance fund will be made available. She remains a reliable ally. Gasps echoed around the room. Someone dropped a glass. Champagne spilled across the tablecloth. Morgan's sister whispered, inheritance fund. What is he talking about? I flipped to the next page. Here, a notary stamp confirms the trust's terms. This isn't about professional recognition. It's about access to millions in research money, money promised only if Morgan keeps pretending to be part of another family. Morgan's face crumpled. She stood reaching for the papers, but I pulled them back. Respect, I said, my voice low, but carrying cannot be borrowed from another man's name. The silence broke all at once. Bridesmaids cried. Her parents looked stricken. Even Ashton shifted uncomfortably, muttering something about never agreeing to this. And then the final blow landed. A man in a tailored suit seated near the back rose to his feet. He introduced himself as a lawyer representing the university. These documents, he confirmed, are authentic. A murmur rippled through the room. Phones came out. Pictures were snapped. By dessert, the story was already leaking online. Dean's family caught in inheritance for name scandal. Morgan buried her face in her hands. The girl who had once lectured me about practicality now sat exposed, her empire of borrowed credibility, collapsing in front of everyone she had hoped to impress. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't done. This wasn't the conclusion. It was only the public unveiling of a fight I had already decided to win. After the rehearsal dinner, silence no longer protected Morgan. The scandal had grown too loud, too viral. Faculty members demanded explanations. Students mocked her with parody accounts. Even her family, once smug and unshakable, now whispered among themselves at the grocery store, heads ducked low as neighbors stared. But for me, it was only the beginning. I did not cancel the wedding outright. That would have been too easy, too merciful. Instead, I left our website open, the banner still displaying our names, with one crucial edit: attendance still pending. Guests refreshed the page daily, watching for updates like a reality show cliffhanger. Every time I changed a line, it sent ripples through our community. Truth pending too. That phrase I added one morning turned into a meme by afternoon. People screenshotted it, added laughing emojis, and speculated what I would reveal next. My passive announcement had turned into a countdown clock, one Morgan couldn't stop. Meanwhile, the press had begun digging deeper. Journalists uncovered that nearly every grant Morgan had secured in the past 3 years came through committees chaired by Reginald Fitzgerald. Articles questioned the fairness of her awards, the authenticity of her contributions. Her email inbox leaked someone forwarded threads where she had boasted being a Fitzgerald on paper is enough to open any door. At work, colleagues stopped inviting her to panels. Invitations vanished. One journal even withdrew a pending paper citing conflict of interest under review. Morgan tried to fight back. She posted a carefully worded statement on LinkedIn. My academic identity is separate from my personal life. The name I use professionally reflects years of hard work, not favoritism. But commenters tore it apart. Some reminded her of the viral clip. Others attached the inheritance emails. The post gathered thousands of angry reactions before she finally deleted it. One night, I returned home to find her slumped at the dining table, makeup, smudged phone buzzing with unread notifications. "You're destroying me," she whispered. "No," I replied evenly. "I'm letting the truth destroy you. All I did was step out of the way." But behind my calm words was something sharper. Because what they didn't know was that I had one more weapon left. Landon had forwarded me another document, this one not meant for public eyes. A private message from Reginald to a senior administrator. "Keep her close. She is our key to securing federal grants. Her loyalty ensures continued access." I stared at that message for hours, the words burning into me. Morgan wasn't just clinging to a name. She had been groomed into becoming the Fitzgerald family's pawn, their useful face to secure millions in funding. And if I chose, I could make that message public. The question was not whether I would use it, but when. For now, I let her suffer under the weight of whispers of invitations withdrawn of bridesmaids who stopped answering her calls. I watched as her polished world cracked piece by piece until humiliation followed her into every room. Revenge was not loud. It was slow, deliberate, patient like water wearing down stone. And the stone was finally breaking. The wedding date drew near, but no preparations followed the usual rhythm. No dress fittings, no flower arrangements, no cheerful calls from relatives confirming their flights. Instead, people checked the wedding website like it was a stock ticker waiting for the next twist. My updates had turned our engagement into a public spectacle. Morgan begged me to stop. She showed up one evening, face pale, eyes ringed with shadows from sleepless nights. "Just cancel it if you want to," she whispered. "Stop dragging this out." I studied her carefully. Once I had loved her ambition, the way she carried herself in lecture halls, her precise notes written in the margins of academic texts. Now I saw only desperation, desperation tied not to me, but to the Fitzgerald legacy. "I will," I said, "but not yet." Because timing mattered. The final straw came 3 days before the wedding when a journalist published a full exposé, Fitzgerald Dynasty, How Academic Influence Became Family Property. The article laid bare the inheritance fund, the favoritism in grants, the viral video, and Morgan's role as the loyal pawn. Her name, once her shield, was now her cage. That night, I made my decision. I opened the wedding newsletter, a platform meant for joyful updates, travel tips, and hotel blocks, and typed a single announcement: "The wedding is canceled. Respect cannot be borrowed from another man's name." I hit send. Within minutes, every guest received it in their inbox. Screenshots appeared online before the hour ended. The next morning, Morgan stormed into my apartment, eyes red. "How could you humiliate me like that, in front of everyone?" "You humiliated yourself," I said gently. "I only held up the mirror." She reached for my hand, trembling. "Please, Alex. We can rebuild. I'll change my name if you want. I'll—" I pulled my hand away. "It's not about the name anymore. It's about the truth. And the truth is, you chose a legacy over a life with me." Her knees gave out, and she sank onto the couch. I watched her shoulders shake, but no tears came. Perhaps she was too drained to cry. Her family avoided me after that. The Fitzgeralds closed ranks, refusing interviews. The bridesmaids unfriended her quietly, one by one. Even her sister Genevieve stopped answering calls. The empire she had leaned on crumbled, not with an explosion, but with silence. And yet as I walked away, I felt no triumph, only clarity. I had lost a fiancé, yes, but I had gained something far more enduring: freedom from the illusions I had once mistaken for love. Weeks later, as life settled, an unexpected email arrived. A major investment firm invited me to discuss a new position. "We admire how you handled a difficult public matter with integrity," the recruiter wrote. I smiled at the irony. While Morgan's name had chained her, mine, untarnished, had opened a door. But what they didn't know was that another door had cracked open too. Because at the bottom of that recruiter's email was a single line: "A former guest at your rehearsal dinner recommended you." Someone out there had seen everything. And perhaps, just perhaps, they knew even more about the Fitzgeralds than I did. The wedding day arrived like a ghost, an event that had once promised joy but now carried only silence. The church sat empty, its doors locked. No music played, no flowers adorned the pews. Yet my phone buzzed constantly as people posted pictures of their unopened invitations, tagging me with captions like, "Guest respect really is priceless." I spent that morning alone in a cafe downtown, sipping black coffee and watching the city move as if nothing monumental had ended. Outside, couples strolled hand in hand, vendors shouted over the hum of traffic, and life carried on, without noticing the ashes of mine. Morgan did not call. Her parents did not reach out. Even Reginald Fitzgerald, who had once spoken about me like I was a convenient son-in-law, stayed silent. Their silence told me everything: the dynasty had collapsed inward, and I was no longer part of their calculations. But I had one last act. That afternoon, I updated the wedding website one final time. Across the top banner, where our names had once entwined in gold script, I wrote "Marriage cancelled. Truth intact." Beneath it, I added a line that spread quickly across social media. "Respect cannot be borrowed, and love cannot be leased." It was shared thousands of times within the hour. Some called it poetic, others called it ruthless. But for me, it was closure. In the days that followed, opportunities opened unexpectedly. A fellowship invited me to speak on integrity and finance. A podcast host reached out asking me to share my perspective on betrayal and resilience. Strangers sent messages of support telling me their own stories of choosing self-respect over toxic loyalty. And then in the quiet of one evening, I reflected on it all. Betrayal had humiliated me in front of family, friends, and colleagues. But revenge-measured patient public had restored something greater than pride. It had restored truth. I will not pretend it was painless. Nights were lonely. Trust felt fragile. Yet I learned that a broken engagement is not the end of love, it is the beginning of understanding. So here is my final thought. Families and money always test loyalty, but it is in those tests that you discover who stands with you and who only stands on you. If you think I made the right choice, comment right. If you believe there was another path, share your idea. Because in the end, this story isn't just mine, it's about every person who has ever had to choose between love and truth.